Have you ever had a day so perfect? You thought nothing could go wrong. Yeah, I thought so too, until I found myself dodging knives and fighting smoke bombs in what was supposed to be my peaceful afternoon. The sun was warm on my skin, and for once, I didn't feel like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. The park was quiet. Cherry blossoms drifting through the air, soft laughter in the distance. It was the kind of day where you could close your eyes, breathe deeply, and forget about everything else. That's exactly what I did. I sat back on the bench, stretched out my legs, and let my arms hang loosely over the backrest. My muscles were still sore from training that morning, but I welcomed the ache. It reminded me of what I'd accomplished. Finally, I thought, letting out a sigh. A moment to myself. The air smelled sweet, and the breeze was just enough to make the branches above me sway. Everything was perfect, or so I thought. At first, I heard it faintly, a rustling sound behind me. Probably a squirrel or a bird, I told myself, but then it came again, sharper this time. I opened my eyes, my body instinctively tensing. Years of training don't just go away, even on days like this. I turned my head toward the bushes, scanning the area. "All right," I said out loud, mostly to myself. Nothing to worry about, just nature doing its thing. But my gut said otherwise. That's the thing about instincts, you don't ignore them. So I stayed alert, sitting still, pretending I hadn't noticed anything. My ears tuned in, catching the faintest snap of a twig. My heart started to beat just a little faster. I stood up slowly, keeping my movements casual. "If someone's out there," I called out, "you've got 5 seconds to show yourself." Nothing. Just the wind and the sound of leaves brushing against each other. I took a step forward, narrowing my eyes at the bushes. And that's when it happened. A figure shot out, moving faster than I expected. Before I could react, they tossed something at the ground, a small metallic object. Boom! Smoke erupted, thick and choking. My throat burned, and my eyes watered, but I didn't panic. I dropped low, covering my face with one arm while keeping my other hand free. My mind raced. Who was this? What did they want? Through the haze, I heard movement. Fast, deliberate. A blade cut through the air, the whistle sharp in my ears. I pivoted, the attack missing me by a hair. "Big mistake," I muttered, my voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. I launched into a spinning kick, my leg cutting through the smoke like a blade. The impact was solid, a direct hit. I heard a grunt as my attacker hit the ground. The smoke started to clear, and I got my first real look at them. They were masked, dressed in black, and moving like someone who had trained for this moment. "All right," I said, straightening up. "You've got my attention. Now, who sent you?" They didn't answer. Instead, they sprang back to their feet, charging at me again. This time, I was ready. My legs moved on instinct, launching a flurry of kicks so fast they didn't stand a chance. The second blow hit their arm, forcing them to drop their weapon. I closed the distance, grabbing their wrist and twisting it behind their back. They struggled, but I held firm. With one hand, I reached for their mask, determined to see who I was dealing with. And then I saw her face. She was young, barely out of her teens. Her eyes, sharp and defiant, glared up at me like she had something to prove. For a moment, I hesitated. She wasn't who I expected. "You're just a kid," I said, my grip loosening slightly. "What are you doing here? Who sent you?" She smirked, saying nothing. That should have been my first clue. Before I could react, She tossed another smoke pellet to the ground. The air exploded in a cloud of white, thicker and heavier than before. I coughed, trying to fan it away, but by the time the air cleared, she was gone. I stood there, hands on my hips, scanning the park for any sign of her. Nothing. Just the cherry blossoms swaying gently, like nothing had happened. Well, I said to myself, shaking my head, there goes my peaceful afternoon. I sat back on the bench, brushing dirt off my clothes. My pulse was still racing, and my mind was already trying to piece things together. Who was she? Why did she attack me? And what was she running from or toward? I leaned back, staring up at the sky. Next time, I said softly, you won't get away so easily. The park seemed quiet again, but I wasn't fooled. Someone had sent her, and I intended to find out who. For now, though, I'd sit, rest, and wait. Because one thing was certain, this wasn't over.